Instant gratification, and this is something that comes back to sort of mastermind. Every time you play a move, you get feedback. You get to understand what worked, what didn't work, and it can make the next attempt even better. Instant gratification is so important to an application because you don't want the reward to come later. You want it to come now. So again, going back to that sort of Facebook contest that agencies just continue to deploy and deploy, there's no reward after you fill out that form. Oh, now you're going to be one of a million that's going to end up getting this prize. There's no reward there. So think about every single moment of gratification in your app. And a good exercise when you're thinking about this is, what are the most delightful parts of your application? And if there aren't any delightful parts of your application, then that's an area you need to spend more time thinking about. Perpetual engagement. So this is a really good one, and it really dawned on us when we were playing Words with Friends, and we would spend so much time thinking about that perfect word to play. But that word that we're thinking about isn't while we're looking at this screen. It's actually when we're not looking at the screen. So perpetual engagement is understanding, is there something in this application that I'm going to be thinking about offline when I'm not in front of my screen? Is that brand or is that game staying in my head? Am I continuing to be engaged despite having a piece of technology in front of me? And it's a really interesting action. And when you go local and when you go in-store, you can really exercise this idea of perpetual engagement, because maybe something online has a direct or indirect correlation to something offline. But understanding what those things could be and positioning them so that your customers or your users are thinking about your brand offline are a powerful mechanism to pull them back into the brand and stay aware of what the brand is doing. No stress. You don't want time-related stresses. If Draw Something forced you to draw that picture in a few seconds, like in real life, Pictionary, there's a lot of stress. You're surrounded by a group of people. You have to come up with some masterpiece that's going to explain the difficult word you picked up on your card. And when you translate that to social, that's the first thing they got rid of. They wanted the no-stress approach. They want you to take your time and enjoy the interaction you're having with that game. Leverage and enhance existing behaviors. So Draw Something is Pictionary. Spotify is listening to music. Words with Friend is Scrabble. What we're trying to build right now is Mastermind. There's behaviors out there that you can leverage. You don't have to start from scratch. And when you leverage and enhance existing behaviors, then you don't have to worry necessarily about low barriers to entry or no stress. You almost have that inherently because they know what they're doing. They don't have to learn it. They don't have to go out of their way to understand what you're doing. It feels very natural. And that's a great sort of piece of criteria to consider when you're building a social application. Find something that works in real life and see how you can translate it to digital. Finally, the last criteria is you've got to have actions that are proud to share. So you may have many unique actions. There could be a lot of different actions, especially when it's turn-based. But there needs to be some that you'd be really proud to share. So that drawing and Draw Something, that's something you can be proud of. It's timeless. You're going to be proud of that horse that you drew, that your friend guessed in their first try, 10 years from now when it's sitting on your timeline. Think of those actions and really spend the most time out of all this criteria figuring out what those core actions are and make sure that people are proud of them. So how do you know if people are proud of those actions? Well, ask yourself, is this something that is going to come up in conversation offline? When I see the story, when I see that friend go, hey, I saw that awesome horse. That's incredible. Or is it something that people are going to reshare? So a big part of Facebook on every story is the share button. So you're taking someone else's story and you're recirculating it. That's a great story. That's a story that person who posted it is proud of. So ask yourself these questions when you're coming up with your social game. So we took all this criteria and we built a game that we're calling right now Say What. And Say What is essentially Mastermind. But to kind of capitalize on a lot of these criteria, we manipulated it a little bit or massaged it so it would make more sense in the social world. So some of the things that we did is instead of colors, we made it words. So all of a sudden you can really get personalized with the words that you choose. But it's the same scenario. You select a word, you input it into the system, and the friend guesses what the word is. Where we make it less stress is it's not my turn every time they guess, and then I have to say whether it was a right letter, right place, or any. We got the computer to handle all of that. So they guess the word, they get points based on how many tries they guess it in. Then I create a word for them, and then we flip it back and forth. So if you want to sign up for the beta, it's going to be released in the next couple of weeks, and you can do that at game.bnotions.com. Just a simple form, and we can make sure that we circulate it to you guys. Finally, this is a criteria that you can use when you're building any type of social application. And one thing we did to make this sort of easier to have at your fingertips next time you're building an application is we built a canvas that I'd like to give away to all of you on our blog, and 3 of you an actual laminated copy. So this canvas is really inspired by Alex Osterwilder's business model generation canvas. Has anyone heard of that? Yeah, it's also known as the lean canvas. So we built a canvas where you can essentially throw this on your wall, take all your ideas, brainstorm, grab those booths, and sit there and constantly start throwing ideas at this canvas, go through each one of these categories, and make sure that you have enough substance to justify what you're about to build. And if you don't, then you can easily scrap it and go on to the next idea. So we found this very useful when coming up with the game Say What, and what we're finding it even more useful for is when we're building strategy and social applications for all our clients, which are big brands, agencies, and entrepreneurs. So just to kind of offload some of these canvases, I got a couple of questions for you guys, and if you can answer them, then I'd be happy to pass one over. So simple. Question number 1: who can name 3 of the criteria? Yo.
So low barrier for entry, no ceiling on creativity, and there's no stress.
Cool. Yeah, that's 3.
Can you show them what it looks like? Can you open one up?
Yeah, sure. So you want to grab that? Thanks. All right. So it's essentially all the categories we talked about, plus the questions you should be asking yourself to help you brainstorm around them.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool. Let me get that. Okay, second question. How much was OMG Pop sold for? $210 million. You got it. All right, this is a simple one, for lack of a better question. How many criteria are there?
10.
You got it. Okay. There you go, sir. All right, thanks, Sachin. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so AK got to ask you guys questions. Now it's your turn. Whose is this? Can you stand up?
So it seems to me that there would be somewhat of a balance between kind of having no ceiling of creativity and low barrier of entry.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, how does kind of connecting users, especially on that one-on-one level, play into that? I would think kind of there would be an advantage to trying to find ways to ensure that your beginner-level users can connect with other beginner-level users so they're not just getting creamed right off the bat, but making sure that, you know, kind of your advanced users can continue to engage with more skilled players and potentially have a conversation about how to improve. How do you kind of build a framework to connect those users, and what tips do you have in terms of that path forward?
It's an interesting question, and I think we've seen sort of a couple of sort of tactical executions on how to deal with that. So, for instance, with Draw Something, you can pick the difficulty level. So you can have like the 1 star, 2 coins, 3 coins, and they sort of deal with the problem like that. And I think it's very much like it's based on what application you're trying to build. I think the important thing to take away is that you want to consider how that would work. In this game that we're building, it's a little bit inherent in it because essentially, a beginner user can come up with a very short word, and that short word, may or may not be more difficult for the receiving user, but they come up with that short user, and if the word is difficult to guess, then we've built into sort of into the system like hints and so you can buy a synonym or buy a definition, so that the guesser can, if they're a beginner, they can get some sort of support in playing with that user. So I think it's a really good point, and it really depends on sort of what you're building.
Yeah. I guess it's not really like related to the presentation, but in this world where in this like industry where there's so many companies in social media and digital media, how are you so successful?
Sure. I wouldn't say so successful, but yeah, no, I think one thing we've heard in all our presentations is that things are just getting started. Facebook just recently launched the whole idea of stories. Mobile is becoming sort of the big priority right now. So it's a matter of timing, I think. I'd probably be in a lot different situation if I started the company in 2001. than I started it now. And I'll be in a much different situation if I started it 5 years from now. So really kind of seeing where the industry is going and responding to it as fast as possible is probably what we did. When we hire an engineer, we don't hire a PHP engineer or a Java engineer or an iPhone engineer. We hire an engineer, and what we do is when they walk into our office, they say, hey, I'm a PHP engineer. Great. Here's a Java project. You have 1 week to finish it. It has to have a social integration. It has to have a mobile view. And you give them this criteria, and really what we're trying to do is see how quickly they can pick up something that they've never touched before. And that's what qualifies a great engineer as far as we're concerned.
So, perpetual engagement, is there a magic bullet? I mean, we've built something, for example, that's supposed to be used intermittently, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks.
Sure.
But how do you fill in that gap in between?
Yeah, perpetual engagement, it's a very abstract concept. And there's no magic bullet. I think what you need to do is really just, again, consider what it means. So when you ask yourself, even if it's like a campaign or any type of product, what is the user taking with them offline? Are they taking an understanding of something? Are they taking sort of a mission? So we built an app for Future Shop once where the engagement, the perpetual engagement was that every time they fulfilled an action offline, it added to sort of their points online that helped them redeem gift cards. So, there was this sort of very vivid in black and white offline-online component, but something with draw something, like you're just kind of sitting there thinking about, I wonder what that drawing is. So just kind of trying to figure out if your application has something in it that has people inclined to think about it offline is sort of just an important consideration to have. And if you're going to make it very black and white like what we did with Future Shop, then you've guaranteed that, and then there's your silver bullet, or as close as you can get.
Any other questions for Alcom?
Thanks for the talk. It was great.
Thanks.
What was when you say asynchronous, are you talking about real time, turn by turn, or it can be like a few hours after that they come back, that the opponent comes back and does the turn?
It's a good question. By asynchronous, it's really like what can two different people do when they're not concurrent. So it's very much about that time of letting time pass, no time stress. So I can do an action today, and theoretically, the next action may not taken for months or days or hours. But really, I'm passing I'm passing the buck sort of over to that other person, and they can respond whenever they want. So it's to your latter suggestion. It's more so non-concurrent, not synchronous. Yeah.